Welcome, LA Progressive friends, family, and readers. Today, I'm going to be talking with Jiyoung Park. And Jiyoung was a candidate for a judicial election in November. And I ran into her a couple of weeks ago, and I really wanted to talk to her about that whole election process. And so we're going to be talking about, what her experience was like. And I think initially, Jiyoung, when I asked you, were you going to run again? Well, I'll let you answer that. So why don't you give the audience a little bit more information about yourself and tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so I have been an attorney for about 20 years. And I spent a good deal of my career working in labor. I worked at SEIU Local 1000 representing state workers for several years, and I had my own practice when I was running. And now I am working at a small firm in construction law, representing school districts. I ran I ended up running because I was asked to run, and I felt like it was an opportunity for me to step up, and I had already been very involved in politics in my community. I had run for Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. I'm still serving on the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. I ran in the ADEMS election, which, for people who don't know, it's a race within the Democratic Party to be delegates to the Democratic Party representing your assembly district. So I ran in that and won the executive board spot. I actually resigned from it to run in the election. And, it was a journey of a lifetime. It was extremely difficult. It was also extremely rewarding in some ways. And the main thing is that I think we really moved the needle. And by we, I mean, the defenders of justice candidates and the people who were supporting us. So La Defensa and Ground Game LA, Working Families Party, all the people who supported us by volunteering, by donating.
So let's say you said that you were someone reached out to you. So, for the readers who are completely unfamiliar with this process, it's not something that you sought to do. Is that right? So
no.
An organization reached out to you, and you can tell us what organization and how exhausting, or how much energy did it take for you to take on this campaign? What is involved in running for office?
Yeah, so I am a member of Ground Game LA. They're not all volunteer. There are a few paid staff members, but it's a mostly volunteer organization. And they played a big part in getting Hugo Soto Martinez elected, and Eunices Hernandez elected, and then also La Defensa also ended up kind of grooming me to run. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Okay, so Ground Game LA reached out to you. La Defensa, which is another organization. Both organizations, I guess they serve different roles. So La Defensa helped to groom you in preparation for your campaign. So when you say groom, you mean like talking points, how to speak, where to go to speak, how to reach out? What does grooming involve?
Well, there was, that we had conversations about whether I was the kind of candidate they wanted to support. And then once I became a candidate on the slate for the Defenders of Justice, then they did provide us, well, I can't remember exactly what was before I filed to run and what was after. But once I was on board, they provided support in terms of messaging, in terms of social media, the videos, campaign materials for the Defenders of Justice, as a slate. And by the way, it was the first slate of progressive candidates ever in LA County for judicial seats ever. And up until this last election, no public defender had ever won a judge seat. So that's why this effort is so historic.
Monumental, absolutely monumental.
Yeah.
I mean, as a voter, I've been a voter in Los Angeles my entire adult life. And when it comes time to elect judges, I never knew who to elect. That's why we started running this judging the judges piece in the LA Progressive. And really, to tell you the truth, what sparked it was I was a member of the Northeast Democratic Club, and it was time to elect judges, and a slew of judges came through that club who we never knew before. We'd never heard of them before, and they talked a good game, but I had just served jury duty, and one of them, I thought, now I remember this guy, and he was not very kind, and the picture that he's painting of himself as he stands here in the Democratic Club is very different than what I saw in court. And that's when I started doing research to figure out, how do we know about judges? It's a terrible system that we have. So I really wholeheartedly supported you and the other candidates that were working with Law Defensa, because it was monumental to know that there was a slate of progressive judges who believed in restorative justice.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your support. It meant a lot. I mean, that kind of support, the kind of support you provided, LA Progressive provided, is really what got people talking about the judge races and how we need choices other than prosecutors. So all of our opponents were endorsed by multiple police associations and took money from police associations, from members of the Cooley family, of Steve Cooley, who's, a very conservative, kind of right-wing person in law enforcement. So, you helped us change the conversation forever in LA County.
Oh, thank you. I don't know, you may be too much credit, but it is time. I mean, with the huge growth of the prison industrial complex, we really do need to look at the judges. We need to look at district attorneys. We need to understand, who are these people? So many of them just get elected without any knowledge of their background, who's supporting them, who's funding their campaigns. And yet our prison population grows and grows and grows. And we're at a point in this country where we incarcerate, like 25% of the people that are incarcerated in the world are incarcerated here in the United States, when we only represent 5% of the population, the world's population. So it's
Los Angeles has the largest jail system in the world. Not even in the country, but in the world. But also in the country.
Yes.
And that's nothing to be proud of.
Yeah. And so we need to support people like you. So when I say, so let me say that you know, that Dick and I, we're boots on the ground activists. We run, publish, edit the LA Progressive for 15 years, but we're out there, you know, learning about joining organizations, doing whatever we can to try to make our community a participatory democracy. That's what I want. I want participatory democracy. And you can't have participatory democracy without information. So this is why I want you here to tell us. So what was the day-to-day of being in a campaign? What was that like? And was there anything that surprised you? You know, how many events did you have to go to? And how long did you have to campaign?
So in judicial races, the way that they have normally run campaigns, the way that candidates in the past have normally run campaigns is that all they will do is raise a few $100,000 and then send out those slate mailers, which come in your mail, where you buy a spot on the mailer, and it's called you know, the police voter guide, or the senior citizens voter guide, or the Latino families voter guide. They're just made up names, and you buy a spot. So they don't vet you for like what your beliefs are, or who's donating to you. You spend your money and then you get a spot on this mailer. And so a lot of people think, oh, like this says progressive voter guide, so it must mean that they're progressive candidates. No, it just means they bought a spot on that mailer. So they will just spend all their money on mailers, go to some, you know, Democratic club meetings, and some maybe bar association events where you're just really just talking to other lawyers and judges. And then, you know, at the Democratic clubs, you're talking to like a few, you know, Democratic folks, Democrats. And then that was it, you know.
So how much, so like how much would it, a typical to get your name on a typical mailer, how much would it cost?
It can range anywhere from like a few $1,000s to like, you know, $10,000.
Wow.
Maybe more. I don't remember. But you know, that was typically how campaigns were run in judicial races. We, the Defenders Justice, that we changed that, and we wanted to speak to voters directly, you know, get them engaged, and go out into the communities. And that was extremely difficult because LA County is so big.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not even talking about like in city council elections, you know, that you can win by like a few hundred votes because the total amount of people who are voting are like in the thousands, like tens of thousands, sometimes in the, you know, like thousands. You know, in the county, I mean, this is like millions, several millions of voters.
So that's another good point, because most of our municipal elections, like you said, city council. So, you know, we have, I think 14 city councilmatic districts, which breaks up the city of Los Angeles, not the county, the city of Los Angeles, which is a subset of the county. It breaks it up into 14 pieces. And then like we'll have a county board of supervisors. There are 5 of them. But in your case, you would be running county-wide.
Which is Long Beach to Antelope Valley to
Pasadena,
Porter Ranch to Santa Monica and everything in between. So it was extremely difficult to try to reach people in all of the different parts of the county, because it's so huge. but it was important to us to hit every, part of the county. And so we did do that. We didn't get to every community because there are just too many, but we did hit every part of the county. And it's the first time that a judicial campaign made such a concerted effort to really get out into the community. And I think, people thought previous candidates were like, it's too big, we don't, the only people who are voting are like, this demographic that's going to vote for us. And so, I think candidates felt like they didn't really have to try very much, but obviously we weren't the favored candidates because we're not prosecutors. And so we felt like we really needed to work for our votes, but also, it's so important to us to just have those conversations with people about why it's important to vote in judges who aren't just prosecutors.
Yeah. Now, when I ran into you a couple of weeks ago at an event, and I asked you, "Are you going to run again?" Yeah, and what was your answer, and why?
It was an emphatic no.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to change your mind. So why an emphatic no?
I just want to do something else with my life. I think I don't think that being a judge is just the right role for me. I mean, by example, I'm told, and I'm not sure about this, that my opponent was assigned to housing court. So a judge in housing court is deciding on evictions day in and day out. There is an argument that I would be a more fair judge, and I think that would have been the case, but that would just take such a mental toll on me, and such a spiritual toll on me to just apply the law, which means I would be dealing with evictions. And given the state of the housing market, all that happened with the pandemic, just watching people be evicted all the time would just take too much of a toll on me. And I just don't think that would have been the right place for me. So
yeah. No, I think that that's a real legitimate position to take, and it required for you to do a real deep dive within yourself to see if that was something you wanted to do. I know that you want to change the system. I can just tell by the things that you're engaged in. So maybe it is better that you do what you're doing from the outside, because obviously housing as a human right is something that we need in this country, and especially in the state of California.
Yeah, so I remain active as a volunteer organizer for Public Bank LA, which would, we're pushing for a public bank, a municipal bank, so that we can divest from the Wall Street banks, which the city currently banks with and pays out, so much money, like millions in fees, and then like 1.5 billion in servicing debt with the bonds and everything. And so if we can capture the cost savings in a public bank, we can invest that in affordable housing, in green infrastructure, and create those green jobs, and deal with climate change in our backyards. And so I'm doing that. I'm also on the advisory board for LA Democracy Vouchers, which is an effort to create public financing of campaigns in the city, which would be a big game changer. And that effort is really just trying to do what already exists in Seattle. And in Seattle, it's already diversified the candidate pool. It already resulted in the people elected being more diverse. And so, and it basically, what it would allow people to do is it would allow people to donate to campaigns regardless of your income. And that includes unhoused people, because you get a credit in a certain amount to donate to campaigns, and then everyone gets like a real say, an opportunity to have a real say in who gets elected. So I remain involved.
That sounds wonderful and exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be putting a link to each of those organizations that you just spoke about. So you're now working as an attorney for a firm. You're doing all of the different volunteer efforts that you're involved in. Anything you want to put a plug in before we end our conversation?
Yeah, so my understanding is that La Defensa is going to run a slate of judicial candidates every election cycle. So please support their efforts. They also have an app called Rate My Judge. So it allows people to have insight into how specific judges are ruling, and create some transparency and some accountability. And so they have an app. If you ever have to go to court, please leave a review. Or if you ever have to go to court, then you can look at it and see what other people have said about a particular judge. So yeah, please support La Defensa. Please talk to your friends, your family, and say, do not skip the judge races. Look at voter guides like the one LA Progressive, writes up every election cycle, or, any like respectable progressive voter guide, not just one that says I'm a progressive voter guide, but a trusted progressive voter guide, and vote in the judge races. I can't tell you how many people I met who I know are progressive, and they were like, oh, I just didn't know who to vote for. So it's really up to each of us to make sure that everyone we know is voting in the judge races.
Wow. Well, I think that that's very good, sound advice. And that Rate My Judge is an awesome app. And in fact, it's relatively new. I guess it's been about 1.5 years since it went live, but I'm using it now to prepare for the next judicial race. So if any judge is running, then I can go to Rate My Judge and see if that person has had positive or negative responses.
That's so exciting that you're using it. And I'm really so grateful that you're so engaged and supporting the effort to diversify the judiciary.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Jiyoung, it's a pleasure to talk with you this afternoon. I wish you continued luck in all that you do. And we will stay in touch because we're involved in some of the same stuff.
Definitely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity. And thank you for all of the support that you've provided.
Great. Well, so long. Have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.